There we go. I see people showing up now. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining tonight. Uh, awesome. I see everyone is here. Other people will join us momentarily, but we'll get started for the sake of time tonight. My name is Leroy Smith. Welcome again. Thank you for joining me on this webinar. This is actually my first webinar that I've hosted just for my organization and not on someone else's platform. So I'm really looking forward to your feedback to see how I can better improve the experience for you. So tonight, our topic is revealing curricular barriers that harm neurodivergent students of color. My name is Leroy Smith again, and let's get started. So I always like to start off, and I couldn't start off this Black History Month and going into Women's History Month without celebrating one of my favorite authors, Toni Morrison. And this quote is going to help frame some of our learning today. I'll read it aloud for you all. I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art. Kind of like this artwork you see here. There's a lot of messiness of it all, and it's important that we acknowledge it, especially during these times where we see a lot of attacks in education across the board, whether it be for funding, whether it be for programming, curriculum, our students directly, our staff directly, our students' families. So it's very important to acknowledge that and also refuse to succumb to it. So today we're going to talk about not only revealing those barriers, but what we can do about barriers that harm neurodivergent students of color and how we can learn from the failures of the past and even our present so that we can build our knowledge source and be more effective for them. Alrighty, so framing our learning today, that it's imperative that we, as we just begin to see more and more students who are neurodivergent, students of color, be in our classrooms, be identified as neurodivergent or a student with a disability, or students of color coming from all parts of the world and also here in the US. Give me one moment so I can welcome some people in. All right, people, admit. Excellent, welcome. As we are engaging with all of our diverse students, it's imperative that we acknowledge and accept and address the unique opportunities and challenges that comes with that, so that we don't punish our students for our mishaps as adults and practitioners, that we protect them and promote them through their educational experiences. Oh, the party is getting lit in here tonight, so people are coming in here. There we are. Thank you for joining. Alrighty, so a little bit about me. If you don't know me, I know probably some people here have met me before, but my name is Leroy Smith again. I just wanted to give you a little bit about my life because I think it's so important to connect on a personal level so you know the person who you're speaking with a little bit more and that you feel more comfortable in this space. So on this side of the picture, you'll see my god kids a few years ago at their kindergarten and pre-K ceremonies, promotional ceremonies. You'll see some of my former students from years ago in first grade, special education, my girlfriend. One of my favorite spots to visit, right on a national mall in DC where Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. Any sip and paint people, I'm a sip and painter. Love sipping and painting. This is a couple's painting I did with my girlfriend early on when we first started dating. We have a few other paintings in here somewhere. My youngest brother, Daryl, when he graduated from high school 2 years ago, some of my former students in fourth and fifth grade special education, and one of my former colleagues, Miss Markey. One of my long-term colleagues and also collaborators over the years with the Center for Civic Education, and my longest-standing client with Dr. Donna Phillips. My cat, Sage, who's going a little wild in the room next to me, and my high school choir. This is a picture from a few years ago, but I still support them in a variety of ways as a volunteer and as an alum. So that's a little bit about me. Once again, I have over 14 years of experience in education, born, raised, and still live in the great city of Baltimore. I'm still a little biased, and I think we're one of the best food towns in the whole U.S. Because I've been to other places and I've just been a little disappointed from time to time, but Baltimore always serves me well. I've served in a variety of capacities from special education teacher, instructional coach, MTSS, gifted and talented, you name it. I feel like I've been in a lot of different positions that have informed this webinar that you're here to experience tonight. So a little bit about my company. At Realize Curriculum Solutions, we're partnering with educational organizations like the ones that you're a part of to help create relevant and neuroaffirming curriculum solutions to elevate our neurodivergent students of color. If you look off to the left, some people that we've worked with before or been on podcasts with before. I actually see one of my good buddies, Craig, here. Had a chance to be on his podcast. So if you get a chance to look at Brave Voices in Education podcast, please listen. It's a great podcast. He has amazing guests on there. So here's some of the people I've worked with and I'm about to work with since 2020. And you're actually going to get a chance to see our values tonight around authenticity, accessibility, academic excellence, and advocacy. You'll see that in work tonight. So your learning rights, you have a right to all of these. I always like to frame it, not norms, but rights, things that you deserve no matter what. And so as a learner, you have the right to feel safe and promote safety, to ask questions, make mistakes, revise your thoughts, respectfully disagree, help someone when giving consent, take your time to think and decide, and also to show your learning in authentic ways. So I want you to hold sacred these rights for yourself tonight and also the other people in this space. So our learning outcomes. Today, you're going to identify some curricular barriers that harm neurodivergent students of color within your organization, and also identify some actions that you can take to address those curricular barriers. All right, now that we got our setup, we've gone through part of the agenda so far. We just finished our introduction and our learning rights and outcomes. We're going to move into a connection that's, I know it says in the chat we're going to do this, but I'm going to actually ask some people to come off on mute, from mute to actually do this portion. So get ready for that in a moment. We're going to talk about neural relevance. We're going to talk about the barriers. We're going to talk about how you can address it, and we're going to close out and do a survey. Alrighty. So initially we had the chat, but it looks like there was some difficulties with the setup with the chat. So I'm going to call on people in a moment. If you can come off mute and share with us, instead of typing in a chat, could you share the first grade level you remember feeling affirmed as a learner? Thank you. It looks like some people are able to get in the chat. So if you're able to type in the chat, please type in the chat. And if you want to come off mute, let us know. The first grade level you felt affirmed as a learner, that you felt like I'm enough. There was an educator who really made you feel seen and heard and respected. Let's see when the first grade level that was for you. And if you feel more comfortable, like I said before, you can also type in the chat or you can come off mute and let me know.
I can join.
Go ahead.
All right. So for me, Craig Aarons Martin, yes, I was excited to share a mic with Mr. Smith. So dope to be able to do that. The grade I would share is grade 8. Specifically, I had a teacher after I was kicked out of my Algebra 1 class. There was a black man who said, like, I'll take you. And he had the only students in the school who were taking this class were aged out, and they didn't have any other options. It was like, take him or don't go to school. So I was moved out of an 8th grade algebra class into this man's class, where he made me feel seen and loved. Most of my classmates had education plans, had aged out or more. And it was just great to be in a class where I felt seen. He was actually the first Black male educator I ever had.
Wow.
And it was great. And he put me on my trajectory to me becoming a teacher. And so I'm grateful for Charles Vincent. May
Excellent.
he rest in peace.
Excellent. Wrestling in power. I see in the chat, Haley. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Second grade. Um, I think I also saw Lindsay, that you wanted to come off mute.
Yeah, I was going to. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm Lindsay Morris. I share some similarities with you guys. I currently do after school programming in Baltimore City, in the Park Heights area. So,
Woo. Park
yes,
Heights, Shirley
yes,
Avenue. I grew up over that in that area for a little bit.
very nice. Montgomery County native. The first time that I felt like the first grade that I felt affirmed as a learner was probably eighth grade with
Hmm.
my English teacher. I was not on a higher advanced learning track or
Hmm.
curriculum until I was in high school. And it's because my eighth grade teacher challenged both myself and my mom to say, hey, I don't really care what her other teachers have been saying. She needs to be in the honors AP,
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
courses,
Hmm.
because she can do X, Y, and Z. So I honestly do credit a lot of my success to that very small interaction,
Hmm.
because without it, I wouldn't be in the places that I am now. So I think that's the first time I felt affirmed as a learner.
Excellent. And I wanted to give the space to Haley or Nick if you would like to come off mute and give a little bit more context to your response.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm
Of course.
excited to
Thank
be
you.
here. My name is Haley Riley, and so originally I'm from Pittsburgh. That's where I was
Hmm.
born and raised, where I grew up, but I live in Richmond, Virginia. And
Okay,
so
cool.
just some context about me. I worked in public education for a couple years. Right now I work in the nonprofit space.
Hmm.
So I'm supporting early childcare educators who are kind of on the front
Hmm.
lines working with, neurodivergent
Hmm.
students. And
Excellent.
um, I'm also a parent of a neurodivergent student as well. So
Excellent.
I'm here, with different perspectives. But yeah, for
Hmm.
me, growing up, went to elementary school in Pittsburgh, and second grade was really the time that I think I felt, affirmed as a student
Hmm.
and as a learner. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, just pretty much the same as what the other gentleman said, just really I really felt seen, by my teacher and really yeah. So I'm here just to soak it all in. Your
Excellent.
introduction was great. I was also in chorus in high school, and
Whoop,
a
whoop.
lot of the I'm a cat mom, so a lot
I
we
love it.
seem to have a lot in common. So
Love it.
yeah, this is really cool. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming by. I'll share my story actually. First grade, my teacher, Miss Reinhardt. Prior to Miss Reinhardt, I actually had two black female educators, and then Miss Reinhardt was actually my first white educator in Baltimore City schools. Most of my educators were actually black in Baltimore City schools, so I was very fortunate to have black teachers the majority of my career all the way through high school, which I know a lot of people don't have throughout the country, so I definitely don't take it for granted. But Ms. Reinhardt was the first teacher I felt seen and heard because one time when I was out with the flu, I remember I was out of school for a few days and she just dropped by my house, our apartment, which is right across the street from the school, and brought soup and some milk and some bread for my entire family because we were all sick. My brothers and I, we were all sick. And she just said, I hope to see you the next day you come back to school. We really miss you. It was the first time that I understood that it was very much possible that people outside of my family could show respect and care for me. That was very genuine and really inspiring. And because of her and so many other teachers I had that were great teachers, that inspired me to get an education as well. So I'm going to move us along to respect everyone's time. But we did this activity affirmation time travel because, and I've done this activity with a few other people before and groups before, and what I realized is that so many of us as people in education or just people in general, we don't feel this until later in life. Some of us don't get a chance to feel affirmed until, I saw someone say eighth grade. Some of us, I did this activity recently in Colorado this weekend, and someone said 11th grade. So could you imagine that a child goes all the way up to 11th grade and doesn't really feel seen or heard? And this is a great activity to do with your students. It's a great activity to do with your staff or your colleagues, just to see when that first time you felt seen and heard, because it means something and it makes a difference in people's lives. So we're going to move along. And we're going to talk about the multiple stories. For most people who have ever worked with me, they know I'm a data guy. They know I love my numbers. And as a math coach, I'm always looking at numbers anyway. And so I wanted to look on the left-hand side, we're looking at Black neurodivergent students in the state of Maryland for our context here in Maryland for our state assessment last year. And on the right-hand side, you will see Latin American or Hispanic students that are neurodivergent in Maryland last year as well. On the top section, you'll see in the beige color, you'll see related around mathematics. In the bottom rectangle, you'll see English language arts proficiency, just to let you know what you're looking at on the screen for people who are watching the recording. So in this top left-hand side, we see that in Maryland last year on a state assessment, our MCAP assessment, only 3%, roughly 3% of all Black neurodivergent students between grades 3 and 11 were proficient in mathematics. Only 3%. If we look at English language arts, it's more than double that, but it's only 8% roughly that are proficient, that are Black neurodivergent students between grades 3 and 10. When we look at our Latin American and Hispanic students that are neurodivergent, 4% roughly were proficient in math last year, and about 10% were proficient in English language arts between grades 3 and 10 in Maryland. I say numbers tell multiple stories because we could just end here and say, well, what's wrong with fill in the blank students' names, students' backgrounds? But I want us to get into trying to figure out what really is underneath of all this. Why is it more than 90% of our Black and Brown students, Latino and Hispanic students who are neurodivergent? Why aren't they getting the support that they need to excel at high levels? And we're going to talk about some of those barriers tonight that are preventing them from getting there and what we can do about it. So, embracing neurorelevance in education. So when we look at neurorelevance, we're looking at both the framework of neurodivergent and also culturally diverse. Some people who are neurodivergent are usually, it's a label to describe people who are has a disability diagnosis or a classification. Some of those you might see frequently in educational organizations: ADHD, learning disabilities, autism, emotional disabilities, and speech and language disabilities. Culturally diverse just means people from different cultural backgrounds, of when they're in an environment where they may not be the cultural majority. In our country, our First Nation people, African Americans, Latino, Latinx, and Asian American, and so many more groups. So when we're looking at neurorelevance, we're looking at the combination of both. It's an approach that educational professionals both honor and support the way students learn, which is the neuroaffirming piece, affirming their minds and how they process the world, and then also how students identify individually and within their community context. So that's that cultural relevance piece. So that's where we get the neurorelevance from, both affirming their minds and how they experience the world and how they see themselves. So I wanted to have a little bit of research, not too much, because we're being light tonight. But I always like to include a little bit of research just to kind of ground what we're talking about here in evidence-based practices. So while 67% of students with disabilities spend more than 80% of their school day in general education classes, 13% spend less than 40% of their time in general education environment. So essentially that means that so many of our students who are neurodivergent students of color spend a lot of their time in general education in the regular classroom. However, what we notice is that there's a good percentage of students who spend time outside the general education environment that we need to reach as well. And you'll see the citation here from the National Center for Education Statistics. Now, as we continue into some research around what we can start to do to really support and uplift our neurodivergent students of color, This research that came out in 2025, it was actually led by West Ed group. So some of their research is looking at national patterns here. And in the research here, Arnold and Zagata, they made this conclusion that unfortunately students sometimes experience poorly designed assessment tools that do not effectively capture their knowledge and skills. Assessment instruments might be flawed in the way that they include racial or language bias or are inaccessible to certain groups of students. Beyond poor assessment design, assessment tools and practices can also be problematic in the way that they are used. For example, making day-to-day instructional decisions for individual students based on data from summative tests. I'm going to try to break this down a little bit, that a lot of the times the assessments like the MCAP scores you just saw for Maryland for Black and Latin American neurodivergent students, sometimes those assessments are just not designed well for students. Sometimes they don't capture what students really know in authentic ways. Remember that learning right I spoke about at the beginning, like show your learning in authentic ways. Sometimes the state assessment is not that. It is gearing students to think kind of very singularly and doesn't give them an opportunity to show all of what they know in a way that makes sense to them, that neurorelevance piece. And also, in addition to that, even when we do have assessment tools that are designed well, sometimes the practitioners have a difficult time actually using them to actually affect change, positive change for our neurodivergent students of color. And when they continued their work, they also realized that any effort to improve outcomes for students with disabilities must confront misconceptions and biases about who students with disabilities are and what they can achieve. This is huge. That's that ableism piece. Technical improvements to assessment practices alone will likely not have a positive impact if there's a culture in which the students with disabilities are constrained by low expectations and limiting views of their potential. That's powerful. I don't know if anybody else thinks it's powerful, but their research actually suggests that we can do all of these adjustments to the assessments. We can make them the most authentic, well-designed assessment tools that we possibly can. And still, on top of that, the human element is if we still see our students as incapable and we limit how we actually reach them, they can still underperform even when the assessment tools are improving. And that's actually what we're seeing over time. A lot of educational technology has improved, a lot of assessments have improved over time. However, a lot of the results, academic outcomes on neurodivergent students of color have stagnated, if not regressed, in some areas across the country. So I want to give you a chance to kind of reflect upon what you just saw and I just spoke about, and think about for a stop and jot, if you have a notepad, kind of like how I do as well. I always have a notepad. How do ableism and racism harm neurodivergent students of color? I'll give us about a minute to take a moment to stop and jot. Whoops. I'll give us about a minute to stop and jot. I'll put the timer on so you all can see the timer. And then we'll come back in exactly 1 minute. If you're an early finisher, like I know a lot of us probably are, I actually like to have people speak more because I always think our voices are important to all be heard. Is there anyone who would like to come off mute and just share how you think ableism and racism negatively impact or harm neurodivergent students of color? We'll have one person. Let's see. Okay, that's time there for that. Alrighty, we'll move along for the sake of time. All right, so I hope you had a chance to reflect around that. So now we're going to talk about what you came here for, revealing those curriculum barriers. But I want to frame it in these specific categories because that's how we think about curricular aspects in education. So curriculum, what we teach and its importance, instruction, how we teach and who we teach, and assessments, how we measure students' learning. All three of these are critical parts to the whole learning cycle, from the very beginning of what kids see in their books or online on their platforms, all the way down to how we actually see if they've learned, and also how we measure our impact as professionals. So let's talk about barrier one, which to me, I see far too often. And I think it's just because the research is not well known, or people don't necessarily have, it's not an easy thing to fully understand. So barrier number one is the absence of learner variability. So the Learner Variability Project, if you look them up online, they have a lot of great research around how to support students who just learn all kinds of different ways. So learner variability is just a recognition that each and every student has a unique set of strengths and challenges that impact the way that they learn. That neural relevance piece again, that's the neuroaffirming way of seeing that every child in front of me is unique. Just like we have our own different fingerprints, every student has the way that they approach learning. And so this is what it looks like. So I structured it based upon curriculum instruction and assessment. And there's an evidence here of what it looks like and what it might sound like in an educational organization. So for curriculum, it might look like curriculum materials that do not have notes or guidance or resources for educators to actually support neurodivergent students of color. Some of the high quality instructional materials that are coming out on the market now in education are actually being screened for that and evaluated for that. Are there parts that show how to differentiate? Are there sections of the curriculum that are showing how to support multilingual learners? Are there parts of the curriculum that are actually culturally diverse, including students' lived experiences within it? So you'll know that the absence of learner variability is very evident in the curriculum if it doesn't mention any of that. Instruction that is misaligned, that the curriculum itself doesn't have the notes for differentiation or how to support our diverse students. And then what happens is the people who get those materials then are a little bit confused, because we can't assume that all people who are coming into education, whether it be a tutor, a volunteer, an educator, or a leader, we can't assume that they all know the students as well as they do. And we can't assume they have the knowledge to support. And so you'll know that it's a cyclical effect, as you see. If the curriculum is off and doesn't have the support, then the instruction becomes misaligned. The services for special education become misaligned. And then the assessment, you'll know it's also misaligned because, and it's a barrier because it's a one size fits all. There's not really a purpose outside of just, this is just the one way we do things and that's it. There's no different types of assessments. There's no performance based. There's no rubrics. There's no criterion. It's just, this is it. This is the only one way we do assessments. And there's no difference in item type. Sometimes an assessment is only multiple choice or only true and false or only an essay. There's not enough variability there. When we talk about this barrier of students, the learner variability, it's often because we don't start with students in mind to design from the student experience from the very beginning. And when we do that, we can actually see some progress. I'm going to move us along. Our next barrier, which is a big one, based upon the research I just shared with you, are mindsets and cultures. So we know mindsets are beliefs about a person has for themselves. Thank you. And also others. And in culture are shared behaviors and artifacts among a group. So here's the evidence for this, and I see this far too often as well in educational organizations as a barrier for our students. Curriculum materials reinforce ableism and racism and lacks diverse perspectives and experience of neurodivergent students of color. Could you imagine several of us here identify as a person of color, and maybe some of us here identify as a neurodivergent person of color? Could you imagine a curriculum that's already challenging enough to understand because your mind processes the world differently, and then on top of that is disrespectful to you? You don't feel seen or heard or affirmed until later on in life. You can't feel affirmed right then and there. It becomes a huge barrier. And then what does that lead to in instruction? Well, it centers low expectations or unreasonably high expectations for neurodivergent students of color, and we don't really think about what's the impact while we're actually educating our students. And what does it look like in assessment? Well, it confirms that confirmation bias. It confirms our ableist views and racist mindsets. And those mindsets confirm, well, since more than 90%, if you were just looking at that data at the beginning of the webinar, that more than 90% of Black and Latino Hispanic students are neurodivergent. Oh, well, it's confirming, well, when we do assessment, I guess we should expect them to fail. I mean, they've been failing for so long, right? I've actually heard people say that. Well, of course, my students who have learning disabilities who are Black, of course they failed. I mean, they have a learning disability and they grew up in the hood. You see how that's just the assessments then confirm what people already believe, but it doesn't actually move students forward. It doesn't actually help them increase what they can do in their academic performance. And the last barrier here, a lack of collaboration. So this is when people start going into silos. This is when people start feeling like they're on islands and they're isolated. The leaders are isolated, the practitioners are isolated, the students are isolated, the families are isolated. This is a huge issue, and I feel like it's often the one that's not talked about enough when we think about reviewing curriculum. Often we say, well, let's just review curriculum. We're the experts. We're the teachers. We're the principals. We're the content experts, but we don't include other stakeholders, the students themselves being the primary one, their families. So what's the evidence for this in curriculum? The curriculum materials are selected just by a leader. Monday, a principal or a school district leader or an ed tech company leader just wakes up and just says, you know what? This is what we're doing, and that's it. There's no voice, there's no community built there. And as a result, because so many voices are excluded, our students feel that it's a barrier for them. And what does it look like in instruction? Well, this leader just dictates. It's just an authoritarian style. And we see now in our country, when there's an authoritative style of how we approach education, well, multiple perspectives are left out. Our students don't feel like they're seen or heard or affirmed. And what does it look like in assessment? Well, it looks like leaders not really sharing the data. They're afraid to share the data because they don't want to look bad. They don't want to look like the organization's underperforming. They don't want to be on the news for being an underperforming organization or school. So this barrier of a lack of collaboration leads us to more strife, leads neurodivergent students of color to more strife and not really seeing themselves or realizing success. So I want to give us another moment to stop and jot. If you would like to type your answer in the chat, feel free to do so. If you would like to come off mute, feel free to do so. But here's our reflection questions. Which barrier is the most prevalent within your organization? And why is this barrier so pervasive? So we're going to take a moment just to kind of stop and jot. And like I said, if you want to come off mute, just click on the raise hand feature and then we can hear from you. And if you want to type in the chat, feel free to do so. I'll put a timer on for 1 minute. And thank you, Haley, for your comment in the chat. Take a few more seconds, and then we will move along so I can make sure I get you all out of here on time. Okay, so we're going to move us along. I hope you had a chance to silently reflect. And now let's talk about how we're going to get there. It's not just enough, just like Toni Morrison said, just to acknowledge the chaos and the failure, but it's also that we don't succumb to it. So what do we do to actually solve this? I like to do this in this process because it feels very tangible for educational organizations to do a 30, 60, 90-day plan towards neurorelevance. It makes the work a lot more simple, a lot more clarified, and not overwhelming once again. So within 30 days, if this is your educational organization, what are some things you can do within curriculum instruction and assessment? Well, first, for curriculum, you can conduct a curriculum audit of your current curriculum solutions or materials with a focus on neural relevance. I think it's super important that you focus on a specific thing, that you're not focusing on a whole bunch of things at one time, because you're going to miss out on a lot of important information with just one singular focus. The next is for instruction to conduct a learning walk. So whether it be in a daycare center, whether it be in a school, whether it be in a nonprofit, go around in the different environments where students are learning and just kind of really look at some clear observable measures of what's happening here. Are students, is this instruction really neuroaffirming and culturally relevant for students? And also for assessment, dig deeper into that data, disaggregate, and look at those different data sources and try to identify students based on the intersections of race and disability status. This is really important, and a lot of educational organizations only do the column for race and only do the column for disability status, but often we don't look at how those things overlap, and because there's some students between both of those demographic groups that really need a specific kind of approach, and sometimes you miss it if we only look at race and we only look at disability status. All right, within 60 days. So after you did that within the 30 days, within 60 days, what can you do for curriculum? Review that curriculum audit results. Take time, take a whole 30 days to really dig deep with your team and really look at some of the strengths and the challenges of the current curriculum solutions you have before you start developing new ones or purchase new ones. Because what I see a lot is a lot of organizations, they just run to purchasing really fast, so they run straight to developing different units and lessons for students really quickly, and they haven't really taken the time to just sit and see what is there, what works and what doesn't work, and how we can fill in the holes to the part that don't work, or do we just need to overhaul it altogether, and how do we have a strategic rollout for how we do that. Now, instruction. Review those notes from that learning walk that you took. As you observe different educators or tutors or volunteers, look at what their strengths were or as a commonality, and also what areas of improvement were there for the instructional staff. This is very important, going back to that culture piece, because culture, once again, are shared behaviors and artifacts. So when you go around, look at those shared behaviors and see what's working and what isn't. An assessment. This is one that I preach from the mountaintops, is to really know who the students are in the space. Really say, like, okay, here are my neurodivergent students of color, and what are their different learning plans. This is super important because some of our students are multi-times over exceptional. They're neurodivergent, they're gifted, they might be multilingual, they might have gone through the multi-tiered systems of support or like an intervention process. They might have a 504. So some of our students have so many learning plans, and believe it or not, all these learning plans, I see it often in school context, they don't even speak to each other because all these different people don't even realize, oh, this kid has a gifted plan. I just thought they had an IEP. And those professionals that could sit together and actually say, hey, how do we make these plans speak to each other, so no matter where this child is across the organization, that child can succeed. This is super important and often overlooked because, once again, there's a lack of collaboration. People are in their silos, everyone's isolated, and when adults are isolated, it filters down to students feeling isolated and not affirmed. And within 90 days, identify those changes in your curriculum that you want to make, whether you want to select a new one, a new curriculum solution, identify providers or consultants who can actually help you with implementation, or if you want to develop a new curriculum solution for your students, whether it be supplemental for them to ensure that they're making academic gains. Instruction. Co-creation is huge. So co-creating and implementing a cycle of professional learning, whether it be workshops, collaborative planning, or coaching with your instructional staff, focused specifically on neural relevance. What this looks like is helping teachers understand learner variability, helping volunteers or tutors understand the way that confirmation bias shows up in how we look at assessments and how we respond to the data to instruct. And lastly, with assessments, is analyze and share that data. So if you're an educational leader and you're nervous because the data doesn't look great, share it anyway with the people in your community, those different stakeholders, the students, the families, your staff, other stakeholders, people who are donors, because it actually helps when you're not just stuck and doing everything on your own. When people are connected, that's when the learning and the impact really begins. So don't feel like you're stuck out there on a limb, and let there be a focus on the equity piece and effectiveness. Are we doing these things fairly by students, and are we actually increasing our students' academic results? Alrighty, stop and jot. Um, this is one of our last stop and jots before we start wrapping up in a moment. But take about 1 minute to look at this stop and jot and think about what is one action you will take within the next 30, 60, or 90 days based upon what I just shared with you to address these curricular barriers that harm neurodivergent students of color within your organization. So just think about one thing that you're going to do, because I don't want you to get overwhelmed and have a whole flushed out plan because it's a lot to do in a short amount of time. But just think about one thing that feels reasonable for you to do. All right. I'm going to put the timer on for 1 minute. And after this time goes off, I'm actually going to ask people if they would like to come off mute to talk about what that one thing might be for you, that one action. Excellent. Thank you, Craig. Sharon, we have a few seconds left. All right. So, does anyone want to come off mute and share what's one action you're thinking about to address one of those curriculum barriers within the next 30, 60, or 90 days? And then let's see if I can see who's speaking. Only if you're comfortable. You don't have to speak it right now if you're not comfortable. I know it's a lot to think about at one time. Okay, so we'll move forward. Thank you, Craig, for sharing some resources here and elevating the work that I'm doing here. I really appreciate you. So let's get ready to kind of close out. So we have a question and answer session. I wanted to spend a good amount of time so your voices are heard, so you can actually get your needs met today for your context. So here's the Q&A. Either you can look in the Q&A section of this meeting, or you can just come off mute. You can click on your raise hand feature. And what questions do you have about revealing those curriculum barriers in your organization that harm neurodivergent students of color? Or even reflections from today, from our training today. I see Lindsay. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think this was very informative, first of all. So a lot of things learned. I think for me, especially because I work for a nonprofit and I deal with students in Baltimore City Public Schools, I see a lot of the times that there is that sometimes a disconnect within the communication between those multiple stakeholders. Like my families don't go to the back to school nights. My teachers are very overwhelmed. Their administrators are overwhelmed. And in central office, there's not a cohesive plan of X, Y, and Z. So I think something that I'm reflecting on and something that I actively am working towards within this position is just getting that perspective, because I get it a lot from my students about their feelings about school, but from their teachers of, what can I as a third party be doing to best support the students while they're in my care, as well as, what that collaboration can look like. But there's kind of some, not red tape, but some some tape around that prevents me from
Mhm.
being able to get into those spaces. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what's important that you said is, especially what's going on in the economy, what's going on socially, politically, in our country from historically and currently, is that, when people are feeling the overwhelm, it really does put a damper on all the efforts that we're all trying to do for our students. And additionally, I think that's even more why that barrier of collaboration has to be addressed. Because when we're operating in silos, what happens is then we just pass on overwhelm to the next person or next group. And we're not thinking that we're doing it. It's like an unintentional thing usually. Like we're like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Let me just do this. Let me just do this. I'm just thinking in my own context. Let me get what I need to get done. But what happens is that, okay, now you did your thing, but it's all related. We're not disconnected in our approach for how we work with students. So I think the big thing that I would advise you is to schedule a meeting, to see if you can schedule a meeting with different stakeholders and just get their input. One of the things I've always prioritized is getting the input of different people, whether it be a survey or a meeting or a town hall or a focus group, just to hear different people's voices because not everyone can meet all the time. So a survey always helps. But it's really refreshing when we can hear from, especially the students, when we can hear directly from them what's their experience and their families and our colleagues, and just say, okay, where can we put our minds together and actually put our students in the center of that by saying, what does this look like, or what would it feel like for you to have this? Since we work so closely with them, they're often, and I would say the most important stakeholder group is asking them, what do you want in your educational experiences? And center that and share out what you're doing. Share, hey, this is what students wanted to do. This is what we're trying, and we want your feedback. What do you think is working well for your students? What do you think is not? Come together. Let's see what's happening. Let's come in and let's volunteer. Let's come in. Let's record a video and send it out to you. Some of those things just to make sure that we're staying connected. Because the one biggest piece I would say here is every time I see organizations where there's a lack of collaboration, it really, like I said, it if the students feel disoriented, everyone feels disoriented. So I would definitely suggest sending out a survey or whatever you can to show students are taking ownership of their own learning, because the reality is parents have to work a lot. Um, our staff, they're working a lot. So getting the students, since we are working directly with them, when they become their own advocates, kind of like what you were saying earlier, Haley, of like advocating for yourself, when they become their own advocates and we teach them to advocate for themselves, they become the greatest messenger of their own learning. And other people want to know what's going on there. My kid keeps coming home and saying this and that and this and that. I want to know kind of what's going on. Because so many of our families who are raising neurodivergent students of color, they might be neurodivergent adults of color. And they might have felt like, well, the places where I've been, schools or learning centers, have not been inclusive or affirming to me. So why should I? But if they hear their students coming home saying, I'm enjoying this, I feel affirmed, they're going to be like, well, let me see what this is all about. Maybe this is my chance to actually connect on a different level with the organization. So thank you for sharing, Lindsay. Anyone else? Questions or reflections?
Just real quick,
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna just kind of reiterate exactly what she was saying, which is just the collaboration piece, which is what you've said, because
Mhm,
even for the work that I do, it's very similar. I mean, we always talk about building the relationship.
mhm,
So really having the conversation with the parents, with the family,
mhm,
they know their child best.
mhm, mhm,
Especially for the younger ones that may not be able to
mhm,
actually advocate for themselves. So, yeah,
mhm,
I mean, if it's somebody who has a 504 or has the IEP plan, we're everybody working together. What
oh
what
yeah.
is it what is it that I need to know so that I can best support your child for them to have
Mhm,
success?
mhm. And
Yeah.
out of all fairness, and something I've actually been pushing people with lately, in all fairness, for some of our students' contexts, sometimes their families don't know them best. In the
Yeah,
case that
that's
they
true.
are foster students or they might be adopted, and their family is just getting a chance to know their child for the first time. That's why collaboration is so important, because we can't make the assumption that every student is coming from a household where someone is taking the time to show that level of care and affection and knowledge seeking about them. So I always like to say that usually our caregivers know our students very, very well, but there are some things they don't know, especially once they get to high school. When they get to high school, the high schoolers, they like to hide all kinds of things from their parents about what they're doing just so they can have fun and assert themselves as they become young adults. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to move us along to share that there are some things here. So I have a gift for you. So if you have your phone, you can actually download this. So I have a free curriculum audit here for you if you want to scan this QR code. You can use this for your educational organization to once again audit that first 30 days. Just look through and say what resources are we using, or what one resource I'm using within that 30 days, and say what steps I need to take with either selecting a new one, developing some supplemental materials, or just implementing it all together. So this is a free resource to you that other people have used that have been very helpful, when I'm working with clients and different partner organizations, to just help us get started to figure out where do we start and how do we move forward. Alrighty, and something else. So there's other ways that you can work with me and my organization, because you're not doing this work alone, because sometimes the collaboration piece is challenging, like we said, with some of our families and some of our other stakeholder groups. But something I love doing, and something that's a strength of mine, is connecting people and really figuring out how to make this work. So if you want to get a quote, I actually want to thank Brother Craig for your inspiration for your quote site from this for this form. So if you want to scan this QR code, either you can reach out to me for hourly strategy calls or monthly or quarterly support with ensuring that your organization is working towards neurorelevance. So the strategy calls are less intensive, but it's still one-on-one support. And the consulting is on a monthly and quarterly basis to make sure that we're helping you with developing or executing those plans. Some of that looks like, with some of my clients, it's just we go on a call once a month for an hour, and we just talk through some of the student plans that they have, the IEPs, the advanced learning plans, and seeing where we can find that connective tissue so we can make sure students are supported in different areas. And the neuro relevant consulting piece has been some of the work I've done with the Center for Civic Education and Barbershop Books, which have touched more than 1 million students in the country, with helping them develop culturally relevant and neuroaffirming curriculum solutions that could be used in schools and other organizations, whether it be public libraries, whether it be after-school programs. So if you're looking for someone who can develop the curriculum with you, I also do that to support you. And on that note, I think I did pretty good for timing. We are right at the end. So I hope you all in the chat had a chance. This is something that we did today, talking about those curricular barriers and also some actions that you can take. And what I would love for you right now is if you can do a survey. Like I said, this is my first time doing a webinar on my own platform. So I would really love if you can share some love, share some feedback of how I can improve this for anyone who would like to attend the next time. For people who are watching the recording, if you didn't get a chance to come live, we're going to do this again next month. I'll share the details around that probably tomorrow or by Friday, around when we're meeting next month, to do this again so that you can get the support you need live. For the people who are using the QR code here today, the workshop title is here in the gold color. Please follow us on our website, realizesolutionsllc.com. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Realize Curriculum Solutions. And that's all, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your night, and please take a moment to respond to the questions in the survey so I can learn how I can best be of usage to you. Ooh, my timing is still good after all these years. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Nick, for being here tonight. I value your feedback. I hope I get a chance to see you all again and hear from you all. Like I said, I'll have this again next month, and I'll also share some other things in my newsletter around other opportunities to connect and to learn and to problem solve together. On that note, I want to wish everyone well tonight. I'm glad we started on time and ended on time so you all can get back to your families and your loved ones. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.